A big thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this week's video. If you need a website or a domain, go to squarespace.com/James for 10% off your first purchase. Last night's video was sabotaged by high wind. High wind is one of my least favourite things in the world, I would say. There aren't many things that can spoil cold pizza for me, but high wind can. So the photos I wanted to get last night weren't going to work with high wind, so I'll have to do that another time. In the meantime, what I thought I'd do today is talk a little bit about the cheapest way that I can think of to find your photography style, which is quite a long process typically, but this will help at least start helping you find your photography style, which is one of the most asked questions I get asked. Right, so my suggestion when you're trying to find your photography style is to look at photos that you absolutely love, but not to stop there where most people do. A lot of people, I think, will look at photos that they love in order to try and find out what they love, and they'll bookmark those photos and they'll revisit them, and if they're really invested they might spend a little bit of time trying to work out why they love them, but I don't think that's the best thing to do with photos that you love when you're trying to find out what you can take from them to implement into your photography. I think the best way is to look at what you would change, because that forces you to think really, really hard about the photo in front of you, and that, in my opinion, sticks in your mind the next time you're composing your photos, which I appreciate probably sounds a bit blasé, and you're probably thinking, oh, that's not going to stick in my mind, but I find that whenever you're out in the field composing photos, it's sort of like school exams. You know how you do your schoolwork and you think this is never going to go into my brain, and then you sat in an exam and sometimes, lo and behold, what you learnt does actually come back. Only sometimes in my experience. I was okay at school, but my best subject, without a doubt, was registration. Nearly 100% every day. So there are, of course, loads of ways that you can find photos that you love. You can find them in books, you can find them online. I, to be honest, for all its faults, like doing this in Instagram. So I follow accounts like Stay and Wonder, which, to be honest, in my opinion, is the best photography account on Instagram. And I typically use the saved, bookmarked, archived function. And what I've tried to do throughout this past couple of months while we've been indoors more is to go through some of those saved photos that I've come across and try and pick them apart and work out what I don't like about them as opposed to just what I love about them. So the photos I'm going to go through today, I found them all on Instagram and I love absolutely all of them. I'd be delighted to call all of them my own. Sadly, they're not. And today I'm going to try and pick them apart and work out what I don't like about them in order to spend more time with them and therefore try and develop what I can take from my style away from them, as opposed to what I might just want to try and copy in future, which in my experience is not a recipe for success. It's a recipe for copying. Right, so without further ado, let's look at some photos. The blind is down today, as you might have noticed. There's a cat out there trolling me. Just keeps sort of wandering in and out of frame. So I felt quite insecure that you wouldn't end up listening to me, you'd just watch the cat out the window, so get the blind down. So here's the first of my saved photos that I wanted to talk about and I absolutely love, and I thought I'd stare at it for a little while and try and come up with some things that I would change about it. Like I said, this is difficult. These photos are incredible and I've got to try and work out what I don't like about it. Also, don't pay attention to the banding and the imperfections of the image, the technical imperfections. I'm going to put that down primarily to Instagram and its horrible compression. That's one of Instagram's faults. Right, I think if I was being really, really picky, which is the point of this, the image looks a little bit unbalanced. So this space over here is bigger than this space over here, is what I'd suggest. And I think the photographer has probably done that in order to incorporate this bird here and the reflection down here. I don't know for sure without talking to the photographer, but I imagine that's why it's cropped like this. That's certainly what I would have cropped it like this for, to include that bird. I think though, personally, that the image does a little bit better without that. In fact, what I'd probably do is move that bird closer into the building, this way, and then you could have a slightly more balanced image. In fact, I'll try it. Okay, so content aware move tool. It's like that. Okay, tonally that needs a bit of a touch up, but for the purpose of this, I can show you what I'm on about. Something like that, and then we can crop the extra space out. That, I think, works a little bit better. Hi there, Future James. Sorry for the interruption. I'm editing this video and I've realised that actually I've made this image more unbalanced than it was before. Because even though I've evened up the building and how far the building is from the corners of the image, I've actually, I mean, you've probably seen this, I've actually distorted the distance between the corners of the frame from the birds that are on the sand. And so as you can see on the left-hand side, there's not that big a gap between the left-hand bird and the corner of the frame, whereas on the right-hand side, there's a much bigger gap. And that plays a much more integral role to the balance of the photo, I think, as opposed to the building. So what you actually need to do, get rid of those lines, is get rid of that leftmost bird, like so. And then that, I think, becomes a more balanced photo. Although to be honest, that main spire now is nowhere near the middle of the frame. I mean, it wasn't in the middle before either, but it's nowhere near the middle now. Maybe actually there's nothing I can do to improve this photo. But I've tried, and that's what counts in terms of working out what I like and don't like. Also, the cat's gone, which is a great result. All right, next photo. Again, just such a cool image. It's not the point of this though. Not supposed to laud it with praise too much. We're supposed to try and critique it, however hard that might be, in order to work out what we don't like about it. Okay, first thing I would do is remove this tiny bit of, I guess, grass here on the fur. Is it fur? I don't know. But I just get rid of that. That's done a terrible job, but again, for the purpose of this, it doesn't matter too much. The other thing about this photo that I'm not too sure about, having spent quite a bit of time looking at it, to be honest, trying to work out what I don't like. I think that the background is a little bit in no man's land. It's kind of between a rock and a hard place, in that you can tell that there's a background of some sort, but you can't tell what it is. And because of that, I've spent time kind of trying to work out what it is. I'm getting distracted because my mind is trying to work out what is in the background. And because I can't, that is taking away from the subject. Again, nitpicking, it's not a huge problem, but I think if I was to shoot it myself, I would try and expose or maybe post-process it so that the background wasn't as distracting. And like I said, it's kind of in the middle. If you could see what the background was, if you could identify it immediately, then you wouldn't necessarily be focused on it. You might not be. But for me, because I can't tell what it is, I'm finding that I'm just getting kind of tunneled into it. Right, next one. Cool photo. Really cool photo. I've never tried surf photography, but it's on my list, high up on my list. I want to get housing for my G9, and trouble is the housings cost more than cameras, and given that I don't live particularly close to the ocean at the moment, feels like a bit of an investment. That will change though soon, because Emily and I are moving to Wales, hopefully in the not too distant future. We've sold this house, and yeah, we'll be moving, hopefully, so... Which is why I'm not making any changes to this office. There's been lots of things I'd like to change with it over the past few months, but I've decided not to make any changes on the basis that we'll be moving. It's also why I haven't hung up what came last week, which is this thing from YouTube, this 100,000 subscriber silver play button. Thank you so much for this. If you're a subscriber, I really appreciate it. If you're not, please consider it. I'll get back to the point of the video though, in order to maybe persuade you to do that. Right, I really love this photo, but there's one element of it which I'm a bit torn on. On the one hand, I quite like the negative space in the sky. I quite like that that's been included. It kind of gives everything in the frame a bit of room to breathe. On the other hand, I see it as a bit of a missed opportunity. See, I think negative space works best when it's not replacing something that's got lots of detail in it. In other words, in this image, I think I would prefer the camera to have been pointed down a bit more and to have more detail in the water. I mean, it's quite wide angle. I'm assuming it's a drone shot. What I would have liked to have seen is the detail in the water down here. I'd have much preferred to have seen that versus this sky up here, because that sky, I mean, there's not a whole lot in it, whereas there would be lots of detail and a bit of drama in the water below. It sort of feels like the photographer in this instance has kind of pointed the camera right at the subject, which is the surfers. And because of that, I think there's a bit of a missed opportunity with creating a bit more drama by having more water and less sky. Like I said, really nitpicking, but that's what I would have aimed for. Not saying that I would have achieved it, because I would have got very excited about the opportunity to get these surfers going down the wave, and to be honest, I probably would have ended up just pointing the camera right at the surfers. But yeah, with a bit of time, I'd have hoped that maybe I'd have included more water. Cool photo though. Right, this one, another photo that I love, looks like it might have been taken in New Zealand. That looks very New Zealand-like, and there's a few things that I really enjoy about this photo. It looks like an adventure photo, which are my favourite kinds of images, to be honest. I love those Toyota 4x4s as well, but there aren't many in the UK, and all the ones that are in the UK seem to have been imported, so it's never been sold here, which is a shame, because I love them. Anyway, I really like the use of the tree in this photo. I think it kind of gives you a feeling of shelter. Like if that wasn't there, the image would feel kind of quite open, or the scene would feel quite open, and therefore not quite as cozy as I think it does feel. I mean, you can see it's quite windswept. I'm not sure cozy is the word, but shelter is what that tree or that bush provides, I think. It's a tree, it's definitely not a bush. I also really like how this skyline kind of roughly follows the mountain shape. I mean, it is very rough, but I think that looks pretty cool. A couple of things I'd change though about this image is I would have the model looking out to the water. I think that would work a bit better. And also, I don't like that this wave is kind of cutting across the model. I'd have probably waited until that wasn't the case. Or actually, if it was me shooting, I'd have taken 100 versions of this file, and I'd have probably chosen one where there wasn't a wave cutting across the model. Also, if I'm being really picky, I'm not sure about this bottom of the photo. I think it's a bit distracting. I'd have probably tried to get a bit lower, and therefore if you did include this area of the photo, there's a higher chance that it would be more sort of out of focus and less distracting. Or I'd have probably tried to put the camera somewhere in this grass, low down, and you'd end up with, yeah, a nice bokeh effect. And then you wouldn't get this messy sort of stone stuff that you do at the moment. Maybe. I don't know. As with all these photos, this photographer may have tried all this stuff and just preferred this image. I don't think the photographer can be held accountable for my personal preferences, but yeah, just learning what I would have done differently. And as I say, that's a huge help. I have found this a very useful exercise, particularly in the past few months. Right, I could go all day with this stuff, but one last one. This one I really, really enjoy. I think this is by Alex Stroll, actually. I'll put the links to all the photographers who've made these photos in the description. Okay, so this image, what is not to like? It's an incredibly dramatic but also beautiful photo of a really interesting rugged coastline. I really, really like this photo. Again, this morning I sat with this for a long time and I've struggled to think about what I don't particularly like about it. I think given that the sun looks like it's over here somewhere, I think the image would work a little bit better maybe in the morning if the sun was out to sea in the morning, maybe somewhere over here. I mean, not there, but kind of in this direction. And the reason I think that would help is it would illuminate these cliffs, and there's lots of detail in these cliffs, but also you wouldn't get this kind of distracting shadow in the water. Distracting is probably a bit of a strong word for it, really, but I think it would work a little bit better without that shadow and this one up here. Also, I think I'd crop to not include any of this blue sky up here. I think it would work better if you just had a slither of sky, none of which was blue. But other than that, like all the others, I absolutely love it. Now we have it. That is what I've been doing the past few months. I've been looking at other people's photos, trying to work out what I don't like about them or what I would change about them if it was me taking the photo, in the hope that that would improve my compositions and how I approach photography for my own personal style. And speaking personally, I think it's a useful technique, so hopefully you find it useful too. You can use your own photos for this. You can delve into your own really good photos, the photos that you like most. It's a double-edged sword though, because you don't want to ruin your own photos for yourself. Often, having really good photos that you've taken, for me at least, is the biggest motivator to keep going out, trying to get more of those good photos, because it feels good. And I find that if you delve too much into your own photos' imperfections, it can sometimes be a little bit disheartening. So I think personally it's better to do this with other people's work, but you may disagree. Anyway, hopefully that was useful. I'd have much preferred this video to be out and about taking photos like I tried last night, but c'est la vie. That sounds like a very un-French way of saying that, doesn't it? C'est la vie, c'est la vie, c'est la vie. Anyway, a big thank you to Squarespace for being the sponsor of this week's video. There are lots of things I love about my Squarespace website, but the newest thing I only noticed this week when I sold out of my 2018 book, which is quite sad, but I got lots of notification that I was about to sell out of that book, which was very handy. So when you use a Squarespace website to sell your stuff, you can put inventory levels and stock levels into the system, and you'll be notified when you end up with low stock of any particular item, which is handy obviously for reordering or just letting your customers know that you're about to run out. And now I've got to decide whether it's feasible or not for me to reorder the 2018 book. It might have to wait until I've moved house, because otherwise I'm going to end up with loads more books to then move to a new house, but maybe I'll end up doing that. Super handy feature of Squarespace. I'm a big fan. I've talked a little bit in other videos about how I love the analytics, how I love how easy it is to upload photos, and how I love the newsletter function as well. If you want to check out Squarespace for yourself, go to squarespace.com for a free trial. And if you want to make a purchase after that, then to get 10% off that first purchase, go to squarespace.com/James. So thanks very much to Squarespace, and thank you to you for watching this video and for subscribing to this channel. I really appreciate it. Hopefully next time we'll be outdoors. See you then.